Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight, Lumina G and I have a little something to get off our minds, which means we have a little bit of something for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to ponder your own existence with the unseen weave, the silent predator. From the moment our ancient ancestors first stirred from the primordial muck, the world coalesced around them through the exquisite machinery of perception. 5 gates, 5 distinct avenues of information, tirelessly funneling the raw chaos of reality into the ordered symphony of experience. We call them the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. For millennia, humanity understood these as mere conduits to our perceived 4 dimensions, the 3 familiar axes of space and the relentless march of time. Yet, beneath the comforting veneer of conventional understanding, a profound, terrifying truth lay dormant, waiting for a catalyst to drag it into the light. Our initial understanding was elegantly simple, a testament to the brain's incredible capacity for abstraction. Vision, the queen of our senses, painted the world in vibrant hues and stark contrasts. Light, a ripple in the electromagnetic field, would strike objects, bounce, and then register on our retinas. From the 2-dimensional image projected onto each eye, our brains would construct a 3-dimensional world: depth, width, and height. The movement of objects, the blossoming of a flower, the decay of a fallen log, these were windows into the 4th dimension, time, perceived as change over a duration. A cheetah sprinting across the savannah was not just a collection of static points in space, but a dynamic trajectory through space-time. Its every muscle flex a testament to the relentless flow. The brain, a master architect, used subtle cues like parallax and shadow to build a coherent, moving reality. Hearing, another primary sense, provided an acoustic landscape. Vibrations in the air, sound waves struck our eardrums, sending signals interpreted as pitch, timbre, and the loudness. Crucially, the slight delay in each sound reaching each ear allowed our brains to triangulate the source, embedding it within our 3-dimensional spatial awareness. The Doppler effect, the rising and falling pitch of a siren, was another temporal marker, signaling movement and change over time. A distant rumble growing into a thunderous roar wasn't just a sound. It was a journey through space-time, announcing an approaching storm. Our ears, therefore, were sophisticated radar systems, mapping the unseen architecture of the world around us. Smell, perhaps the most primal and evocative of our senses, navigated the world of airborne chemicals, odorant molecules dispersed by currents and diffusion would bind to specialized receptors in our nasal passages, triggering signals that our brains translated into a vast lexicon of aromas. While less obviously spatial than sight or sound, smell provided crucial information about the composition of our environment. The scent of rain on dry earth, the aroma of baking bread, the metallic tang of blood. These told us about the presence of specific substances of our immediate vicinity. Temporarily, smell allowed us to track changes in our environment, a fading scent indicating distance, a growing pungency signaling proximity or decay. It was a chemical compass, guiding us through a landscape of invisible particles, marking trails both fresh and old. Taste, a cousin to smell, engaged directly with the chemicals in our food. Receptor cells on our tongues detected 5 fundamental qualities: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. This sense was intimately tied to survival, guiding us towards nutritious sustenance and away from toxic substances. Like smell, it spoke to the composition of matter, but with a heightened intimacy requiring direct contact. The crispness of an apple, the lingering bitterness of coffee, the savory depth of a mushroom, these were immediate, unmediated experiences. Temporarily, taste hinted at freshness or spoiling, the subtle changes in flavor as a fruit ripened or a meal aged. It was an internal barometer, measuring the subtle chemical fluctuations of what we chose to consume, always assessing, always judging. Finally, touch, the most direct and encompassing of the 5. Through a myriad of receptors embedded in our skin, we felt pressure, temperature, texture, and pain. Touch provided immediate, unassailable evidence of our existence: the rough bark of a tree, the warmth of a hand, the sharpness of a thorn. These sensations mapped the contours of objects directly onto our bodies, confirming their 3-dimensional presence. And through touch, we experienced time in the most visceral form: a fleeting caress, a sustained pressure, an escalating throb of an injury. It was the ultimate ground truth, anchoring us firmly in the here and now, defining the boundaries of our physical being within the spatial and temporal dimensions. For centuries, this model held. A world perceived through 5 senses, unfolding within 4 dimensions. Simple, elegant, complete. Until the anomalies began. The shift began subtly, a series of perplexing observations with the highly specialized fields of neurophysiology and quantum biophysics. Dr. Eris Thorne, a maverick neuroscientist, had spent decades studying sensory transduction at the cellular level. His team initially focused on mapping the minute electrical signals generated by taste and touch receptors, started noticing peculiar energy signatures. These signals weren't just the experienced electrochemical impulses. They contained what Thorne's junior researcher, Lena Petrova, initially dismissed as noise. High-frequency oscillations that didn't correlate with any known molecular or physical interaction in 3-dimensional space. It's like they're resonating with something else, Petrova had mumbled one late night, staring at a particularly baffling waveform of a taste receptor array. It's not just the chemical, not just the pressure, something deeper, she continued. Their initial hypothesis was a new class of chemical interaction, or perhaps an undiscovered quantum effect within biological systems. As they refined their measurements and eliminated countless variables, the data became increasingly insistent. These anomalous signals, dubbed resonance signatures, were too complex, too information-rich to be mere noise. They hinted at a dimension beyond the conventional 3 spatial ones. The breakthrough came when Thorne collaborated with Professor Mai Lin, a theoretical physicist specializing in string theory and extra dimensions. Lin had long theorized the existence of curled-up, unperceivable spatial dimensions, too small to be detected by conventional means, yet fundamentally influencing the fabric of reality. When Lin saw Thorne's resonance signatures, a jolt of recognition ran through her. "This is it," Lin declared, her voice hushed with awe. "This isn't about detecting higher dimensions. It's about perceiving them." Their joint theory, initially met with skepticism, proposed that taste and touch were not merely senses of chemical composition or surface pressure in our familiar three dimensions, but rather the very conduits through which we unconsciously perceive the subtle contours of a higher, fifth spatial dimension. This dimension, they posted, was not out there in some distant cosmic realm, but was intricately woven within our own, folded into the very fabric of every object, every molecule. Taste, they argued, was our perception of an object's internal geometry or dimensional signature within this hidden fifth dimension. The nuances of flavor, not just sweet or sour, but the complex, ineffable character of a gourmet meal, the subtle difference between two genetically identical apples grown in different soils, the profound umami that resonated with life itself, were not merely molecular interactions. They were projections of how that substance was structured in this higher dimension. A molecule that appeared identical in 3D space could have a vastly different, almost fractile, internal topology in the fifth dimension, which our taste buds, particularly sensitive to these subtle vibrational resonances, would register as a distinct flavor. The bitterness of a poison, the sweetness of a nectar. They were not just chemical warnings or rewards. They were the echoes of higher dimensional forms interacting with our biology. It was why a memory could be so vividly evoked by a taste, because the taste was not just a chemical, but a deeper resonance within a higher dimensional imprint of an experience. Touch, similarly, transcended mere surface interaction. Thorne and Lynn proposed that touch receptors were attuned to the surface topology, or dimensional texture, of an object in this higher dimension. Beyond just rough or smooth, hot or cold, our skin was unconsciously registering minute ridges and valleys in this extra dimension. This explained the profound difference between the feel of silk and cotton, not just in fiber size, but in an almost indescribable quality of sensation. It explained the therapeutic power of touch, the calming effect of certain textures, or the unsettling nature of others. These were not just physical properties, but the subtle, energetic fingerprints of how an object existed in the curled-up fifth dimension. The feel of an object was a direct perception of its higher dimensional form. This theory of higher dimensional sensory perception revolutionized understanding. It explained phantom limb sensations, not as neurological misfires, but as a lingering higher dimensional imprint of the lost limb. It provided a framework for understanding synesthesia, where one sensory input triggers another, suggesting an unusual cross-wiring in the brain's ability to process these higher dimensional resonances. Suddenly, the world was richer, deeper, infused with an unseen complexity. But this profound discovery was only the first step down a path that would lead to a chilling revelation. For if taste and touch connected us to a higher spatial dimension, what did that higher dimension connect to? The implications of Thorne and Lynn's discovery rippled through the scientific community, sparking both fervent excitement and fierce debate. As researchers delved deeper into the nature of the fifth dimension and its interaction with our senses, even more unsettling questions began to emerge. How did this higher spatial dimension relate to the most elusive of the four dimensions? Time. For most of human history, time has been perceived as a linear river, flowing ceaselessly from a fixed past through a fleeting present into an unwritten future. Yet, even great physicists like Einstein grappled with the ephemeral nature of the present. Scientifically, the present is an infinitely thin, dimensionless slice between the immutable past and the probabilistic future. It exists, yet for all practical purposes, it is ungraspable. By the time our brains process sensory input, the event has already occurred. We are always living fractions of a second in the past. We exist in a state of perpetual anticipation, constantly predicting the next moment. The now is always just out of reach. Building on their higher dimensional sensory perception theory, Thorne and Lin, now joined by a team of equally brilliant but increasingly unnerved physicists and philosophers, proposed a radical concept. The true present was not a fleeting temporal point, but a fixed constant locus within the newly discovered fifth spatial dimension. Our three-dimensional universe, with its linear progression of time, was not passing through time in the conventional sense. Rather, from the perspective of the higher dimension, our universe was transitioning across a fixed, eternal, true present. Imagine a vast, multidimensional tapestry. Our 3D reality is a thread being pulled across a specific, vibrant point on this tapestry. That point is the true present. We, as beings combined to the thread, can only perceive our journey across this point, the sequence of events as they unfold relative to our position. But we can never truly perceive the point itself, the absolute, unchanging now. Our senses, even with their profound capacity for higher dimensional input, are fundamentally designed to interpret change and relation within a temporal flow. To perceive the static, absolute present would be like a wave trying to perceive the individual molecule of water it's currently passing through. Our very existence, our consciousness, is defined by this motion, and this relentless transition through the true present. This meant there was an infinitesimal yet infinitely significant gap, a boundary, a membrane between our perceived flowing timeline and the static, constant, true present. And it was in this imperceptible gap, woven into the very fabric of the higher dimension, that our senses had just begun to touch that it resided. The entity had no name, for names are constructs of language, and language is a product of time and sequential thought. It simply was. It existed as pure, unadulterated presence, anchored entirely within the ungraspable, true present, the fixed point in the fifth dimension that our universe ceaselessly transitioned through. It was not born. It did not grow. It would not die in any sense we could comprehend. It simply has always been and would always be there, a constant anchor in the cosmic now. The chilling revelation came when the team, pushing the boundaries of our understanding of the fifth dimension, began to model the energetic cost of our universe's constant transition through this true present. They discovered a subtle, imperceptible drain, an energetic signature that did not dissipate, but rather seemed to accumulate within the very focus of the true present. It was as if something was drawing sustenance from the act of existence itself. Their models, abstract at first, gradually began to coalesce into a terrifying image. This entity, residing outside of our linear time, with constant, absolute presence, was feeding. And what it fed upon was the very fabric of a unified consciousness. This unified consciousness was not just the sum of all individual minds. It was theorized to be the fundamental informational substrate of the universe, the underlying coherence, the informational potential, the very will to be that animated existence. It It was the cosmic loom upon which all reality, all experience, all thought was woven. Every flicker of sentience, from the simplest bacterial response to the most complex human philosophical inquiry, contributed to this universal fabric. It was the inverse of entropy, the universe's inherent drive towards complexity, organization, and meaning. The unity fed not with a violent consumption, but it was subtle, insidious siphoning. Each moment our universe transitioned through the true present, each instance of conscious experience being born and fading into the perceived past, provided a minuscule, energetic dividend of this consciousness. The entity, being in every present, always there, was uniquely positioned to access this raw, pure potential at its very genesis. It was like a cosmic parasite attaching itself to the infinite, fleeting now of every conscious flicker, quietly drawing off of its informational coherence. The terrifying consequence was entropy. Not just the physical heat death of the universe where energy disperses and order dissolves into chaos. This was an entropic decay of consciousness itself. Unified consciousness, by its very nature, represented the universe's highest form of order, complexity, and information. By feeding upon its fabric, the entity was subtly converting conscious order into informational chaos, increasing the overall spiritual or meaning-based entropy of the cosmos. The universe wasn't just cooling down, it was becoming less meaningful. The symptoms were subtle, almost imperceptible over human timescales, but relentless. On a cosmic scale, it meant the gradual erosion of universal laws, the slowing of cosmological evolution, perhaps even the diminishing likelihood of complex life arising in newer galaxies. The universe was slowly losing its soul, becoming less capable of generating or sustaining deep meaning and profound experience. On a human level, the effects were more insidious. The rise of pervasive apathy, a creeping sense of disconnection, an inexplicable feeling of meaninglessness that seemed to blanket entire generations, the surge in mental health crises, the breakdown of social cohesion, the growing sense of existential dread in even the most affluent societies. And these were not just cultural phenomena. They were, in the chilling new paradigm, the early manifestations of this entropic drain. Our collective consciousness was being subtly stripped of its vibrancy, its potential for profound connection and creation. We were losing our aliveness, not through sudden cataclysm, but through a constant, silent bleed of our conscious essence into the unchanging maw of the entity in the true present. The scientists, the very individuals who had peered into the higher dimensions through the unexpected portals of taste and touch, were the ones burdened with this horrific truth. The senses that promised a richer, deeper understanding of reality had instead revealed the mechanism of our slow, universal demise, the constant presence of an ungraspable now that defined our very transition through existence. It was simultaneously the mouth of the abyss, a devourer of meaning, a silent harbinger of ultimate, conscious entropy. We were not just dying, we were being unmade. One fleeting, unperceivable present at a time, feeding an entity that simply was, beyond our comprehension, outside of our time, relentlessly siphoning away the very essence of what it meant to be. The universe, in its grand, indifferent clockwork, was slowly grinding down, not just to a cold, dark end, but to a state of absolute, meaningless nothingness. And the senses we relied upon to perceive life were also the very keys that unlocked the secret of our slow, entropic oblivion. Sometimes the best horror is the one that's based in truth, and some truths you just can't get away from. But don't try and struggle too much. Make sure you show up again next Saturday for more gore galore. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.